Welcome back. So, in light of us watching this chase for Gretzky's goal record, and Ovechkin is going to pass it, and whether it's late this season or early next season, it's going to happen. Ovechkin currently, at the time I'm recording this, five goals behind Gretzky. Gretzky 894, Ovechkin 889. But will anybody ever catch Ovechkin once Ovechkin's got that record? The next highest goal scored in a career of an active player is Sidney Crosby with 617, which is a really good number. Crosby, first ballot Hall of Famer, no question in anybody's mind, but he's not going to get to 900 goals in his career. It's just not going to happen. Now, I wanted to talk about some other records around the National Hockey League that I don't think are going to get broken. I say I don't think because there's always the chance they do. But looking at Gretzky's assists record, that's pretty safe. 1,963 assists in the career of Wayne Gretzky. Crosby, the highest number of assists by active players, 1,058. So, once again, Crosby, great numbers, but he's not going to catch Gretzky. Now, people will point out, hey, that was a different era for Gretzky. Absolutely it was. But we still look at the numbers and the totals, and there are some records that just end up being out of reach because of that. Gretzky's season record for assists was 163. Both McDavid and Kucherov had 100 last season. So, and we saw how difficult it was for them to get to that 100 assists, how impressive that was. And for Gretzky, it was 163. Absolutely insane numbers. Points in his career for Wayne Gretzky, 2,857. I don't think he's got anything to worry about because Crosby's the next closest of the active players, 1,723. So those are records that are pretty darn safe. The goal record, very likely to fall. There is the outside chance at some day, some point, 10, 15 years from now, we could be talking about Matthews and whether or not Matthews is going to pass that mark of Ovechkin for goals. But at this point, it does not look that likely. Just there's so many games that have to be played and goals that have to be scored to get there. Now, looking at goaltending records, it's Marty Brodeur. Now, the winningest goaltender of all time is Marty Brodeur, 691 wins. Now, on the active list, Marc-Andre Fleury's the number one guy. He's also second on the wins list with 573. So it's possible that Fleury wins 100 games between now and the end of the season and gets close. It's not likely, but it's his final season, and honestly, I don't know how math works, right? Bobrovsky, 426 wins, is next on the list. And Bobrovsky is, I believe, 35. So the odds of him getting 270 wins before his career's done, not great. Even though in Florida he's going to get his share of wins, right? Now, the all-time losses leader is also Marty Brodeur. 397 career losses. This is a record that will not be reached because we now have the three-point system. A lot of the time that Brodeur's playing is before we have that three-point system, and so you have more losses. Now you have overtime losses, and so the fact that regulation losses is what we're talking about here. Fleury's next on the list at 339, again amongst active goaltenders. Jonathan Quick, 289 career losses. So not likely that Quick ends up catching Brodeur or anybody else for that record. And Brodeur also leads in all-time shutouts with 125. That's as safe as you can get. Marc-Andre Fleury, 76. Jonathan Quick, 63. The other item that protects Brodeur's numbers, there are a couple. First off, Brodeur played on really good teams in New Jersey for a long time and racked up a ton of wins. It is difficult to foresee a goaltender being in that situation in the NHL with parity the way it is and everything. Also, goalies don't play 70-plus games during seasons anymore like they did during Brodeur's era. So, since goalies play less, you're going to have less wins. It feels similar to like pitching records in Major League Baseball that are completely safe because starting pitchers don't pitch as many innings as they used to. Well, starting goaltenders don't start as many games as they used to either. So there's that. Now, assists by a goaltender, Tom Barrasso leads there. Yep, 48 career assists, and he's way ahead of the next guys who are active. Both Vasilevsky and Fleury have 22 career assists. Amongst active goaltenders, that's tops. So that 48 assists by Barrasso, ridiculous. And it goes to show that he was a very good puck-handling goaltender because he didn't play anywhere near the number of games as Brodeur, but he got some points. So it's one of those interesting little tidbits that you can, mention to a friend of yours. Did you know Tom Barrasso has the most career assists amongst goaltenders? Cool. Did you want fries with your burger, sir? Goals by a defenseman. And this goes back to an era where defensemen seem to score more. Ray Bourque, 410, which is ridiculous. Brent Burns is the highest amongst active defensemen at 260. Burns has had a great career, but he's not going to get to Ray Bourque. He has to get 150 more goals. This is where, of course, the Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes fans will come in and say, hey, they might get there, but it's a long ways out. Points by a defenseman, Ray Bourque, 1,579. And Brent Burns is the leader amongst active defensemen there, too, with 906. So if Burns plays long enough, he could get to 1,000 points. I don't know that he does, but 1,500's out of reach. And it's possible that with the way Makar's been scoring at the start of his career, it's possible with Quinn Hughes that we're talking about them in that same category at some point. But it is a long ways out, and Bourque played for a very long time. Rookie goals and rookie points. This is the Teemu Selanne portion of this video. 76 goals, 132 points. I'm going to go out on a limb and say no rookie's going to ever score 76 goals again. It was ridiculous when he did it. It's ridiculous now talking about it. Ovechkin, amongst active players, 52 goals as a rookie, which was a ridiculous season. And Ovechkin had 106 points as a rookie. Crosby had 102. So that 132 by Selanne is about as safe as you're going to get for a rookie. Just insane numbers. Now, career hat tricks. Wayne Gretzky's name shows up on the board again with 50. 50 hat tricks in his career. Ovechkin's the highest amongst the active players. Act surprised. 32 by Ovechkin. So he's going to end up with the more goals than Gretzky, but he's not going to end up with more hat tricks than Gretzky unless he gets 18 or 19 from now to the end of his career. But I don't know. That's a lot of hat tricks between now and the end of his career. Now, there is a record that he's close to, not just the goal record, consecutive 20-goal seasons, and he being Ovechkin. Gordie Howe had 22 consecutive 20-goal seasons. Fantastic numbers. Gordie Howe, nice to see him on the board, but Ovechkin's trying to take that record down. Ovechkin, 20, including this season. So if he has 3 more seasons of 20 goals, and he could, if he wants to keep playing, he can, and he could get 20 or more goals for 3 more seasons, he'd pass Gordie Howe on that mark. Penalty minutes. Penalty minutes are nowhere near what they used to be in the National Hockey League. So Tiger Williams' record is safe. 3,971 penalty minutes. And I have talked about how I think Tiger Williams being in the Hall of Fame would make a lot of sense. A very, very, very famous player. Part of being in the Hall of Fame should be the fame part. And he was a good player. He wasn't a passenger on the ace either. Tom Wilson, amongst current players, has the most penalty minutes in his career with 1,504. Then you get into penalty minutes in a season. Dave the Hammer Schultz, 472 penalty minutes in a season. And when I was looking at penalty minutes in a season, there's no current NHLer in the top 100 for penalty minutes in a season. We are in a very different league. So not only are we no longer in a league where scoring is ridiculous, like back in the 80s where Gretzky puts up these numbers, no longer in a league where a goaltender plays 70 games plus in a season like Brodeur did, but we no longer are in a league where a guy who's going to get 472 penalty minutes in a season is a thing. Tom Wilson had 187 penalty minutes back in 2017, 2018, and that's high. By today's standards, that's high. Penalty minutes leader the last time I looked was Nikita Zadorov at 135. I don't know if he's had more penalties since then. I don't think so. I think he's been away from the team since then. So that just shows you that nobody's ever going to get anywhere close to Tiger Williams' 3,971, and no one's ever going to get that 472 penalty minutes in a season. So I've talked about the goals. I want to talk about teams a little bit. Goals in a season, the Edmonton Oilers were insane in the 80s. 83-84, that's the record. 446 goals in a season. You divide that in half, by today's standards, it's not a bad season. That team had 223 goals this year. Not bad, not great, but not awful. And they had 5 seasons of 400 or more goals, which are the only 5 seasons in National Hockey League history where a team has had 400 or more goals in a season. So if you held the Oilers to less than 5 goals, you had a pretty good night defensively. That's much of a... And a lot of those goals were against Vancouver. A lot. As a Canuck fan back in the 80s when the Canucks played the Oilers, I knew what was coming. And yeah, it usually wasn't very pretty. If you look back at Gretzky's career and they go over like his big goals and his big moments, just look at how many of those big moments are against the Vancouver Canucks. Goals against, 85-86, the Detroit Red Wings set a record. Nobody's getting close to this. 415 goals against in a season. So that record's pretty safe. No matter how bad things have gotten with San Jose or Chicago over the last couple of years, nobody's been even close to this. A team getting to 300 goals against in a season is considered to be cataclysmic now. 415 goals against, everybody's fired if that happens in today's National Hockey League. In fact, everybody's fired before you get to that 415 goals against. I also wanted to talk a bit about the fact that, yes, these are very different eras. And with records, whatever era you're in, certain records are going to be a little bit easier to get to than others. Back in 81-82, teams were scoring on average 4.01 goals per game. That's where things peaked. 2003-2004, the last season before we lost in a whole year to get the salary cap, goal scoring per team was down to 2.57 goals per game. So that was really low. It was part of the reason the NHL changed it. In fact, the year they came back, goals per game per team, 3.03. So that meant that the goals per game went from roughly 5, to over 6 the year that they came back from the lockout. And I think that was part of what brought fans back. The game was more exciting. It was more fun to watch. And then this season, right now, according to Hockey Reference, I got Hockey Reference for all this, teams are scoring an average of 3.00 goals per game. And so I've got the asterisk there because this is good through the March 26 games that we watched last night. So the NHL's done a pretty good job of keeping the scoring up since the salary cap era came in. And I would expect that to still be the case, but I don't think we ever get back to the 80s level of scoring. Something traumatic would have to happen with coaching. They'd have to make a huge change to the rules to ever see this again, because we have a lot of coaches behind the bench. Back in the 80s when all this was going on, you had a head coach. You might have an assistant. Sure, you don't have video. What's video? It's Roger Nielsen. He's crazy. So, yeah, the game has changed completely. But the records, some of them won't. Some of them will stay in place. So I just wanted to go through the ones that I felt like were interesting. But let me know in the comments section below which record you think won't get reached, which are not on the board. And there are plenty of others I thought I could put on the board, but I wanted to stick to the ones that I thought were interesting and conversational. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. And so the question I asked to you fine people on the internet is, who would break Ovechkin's goal record if anybody did once Ovechkin's retired? Keeping in mind that once he passes Gretzky's 894, it's not like he's gone. Then he goes, well, I got 895, I'm out of here. Ovechkin could end up around 1,000 goals. It absolutely could happen. But let me know your thoughts. Do hit like and subscribe. I will talk to you again soon.